been
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the meeting of the Planning and Zoning special meeting. Today's date is Wednesday, November 15th, 2023. This meeting will now come to order, and we will start with a moment of silence. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam City Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Chair. Before I do, members Benny and York have asked to be excused, and I will mark them so. Abking?
Here.
Botana?
Here.
Marker?
Here.
Severson?
Here.
Summers?
Here.
King?
Here.
Shorts?
Here.
7 present, 2 excused.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is item 6A, Ordinance 93-23. Does staff have a presentation? We'll turn over to staff.
Thank you, Chairman. For the record, Wyatt Daltrey, playing team coordinator for the city's planning division. My credentials may be obtained at the city clerk's office. What we have for you today is a proposal for a proposed text amendment to the comprehensive plan. A little bit of background. This involves the Pine Island Road District, which is this district you see on this map in dark purple that more or less bisects the city. This was a district that was established in 2002. Altogether, areas within the Pine Island Road District comprise roughly 2,600 acres. And those of us who've been in Cape Coral for a short amount of time would certainly understand that this is the primary east-west commercial corridor within Cape Coral. It has direct access to Pine Island to the west and access to I-75 through Lee County as it turns into Bayshore Road to the east. So it's a very, very important roadway. And this is a district that's been established for just over 20 years. This involves revising development caps that we have in our text amendment. I'll get into that in greater detail, but I figured some discussion of what a text amendment is actually is warranted. Unlike many of the cases you've seen before you, this is not a request for a specific property or a specific project. What we're really doing here is revising one of the city's rule books. And so what we're talking about here is one of the policies in our future land use element. Basically, what we're going to propose is making a change and removing some language and inserting some additional language to provide further guidance for development in the Pine Island Road District. We've had, I don't know if you were able to attend or had witnessed a couple of committee of the whole meetings that we had regarding this discussion with council. This kind of became an issue starting in August. And so what we're trying to do here is to resolve this issue that's arisen as far as development caps within Pine Island Road District. Being a change to our rule book, this is not something that you just present to the council and it gets adopted. It involves state and regional agency review, so we hope to present this to you, present this to council in 3 weeks, bring it to the state and regional agencies, and bring it back for final adoption in either January or February of next year. So it's a laborious process, but it's one that's kind of mandated by law that it goes through this step-by-step process. Okay, regarding Pine Island Road District, again, as I mentioned, established in 2002, and oddly enough, or I should say not quite unique, but rare among areas in Cape Coral. Back when this was established in 2002, the then state land planning agency that was called the Department of Community Affairs required that the city develop a development cap table, which basically provided for limitations on uses, with a higher limit for things like retail square footage, office, warehousing, industrial square footage, residential units, and hotel rooms. Outside of, say, like our South Cape future land use map classification, it's pretty much the only area where we do have development limits for our land use. Well, in the intervening 20 years, there have been major improvements made to Pine Island Road. Basically, the expansion of that district, we added something like nearly 400 acres worth of land in that time. Utilities have been provided to pretty much the entirety of the Pine Island Road district. Widening of Pine Island Road, particularly that segment west of Chiquita, once was 2 lanes and it's now 4 lanes. And now there's further discussions to widen Pine Island Road, has led us to revisit the purpose of these caps, make revisions. Furthermore, the success, and we've seen it particularly recently, of attracting multifamily residential has led to this residential cap, which is 5,030 units, nearly being met. So the city will be unable to issue development permits for residential construction once that cap is reached, because the comprehensive plan does have legal standing. We cannot, frankly, violate our comp plan. So when we see issues like this, we need to address them. This is the table that we have currently in our Pine Island Road District. So as I mentioned, it's broken down by use. So you have retail, you have office, warehouse, light manufacturing, you have hotels, and you have residential. And basically, the upper limits, as you can see for retail, are just under 4.4 million square feet. For office, warehouse, light manufacturing, just about 1.6 million square feet, 790 hotel rooms, and 5,030 residential units. As I mentioned just a minute ago, residential units are really the cap of concern right now. Not so much because that's what we have built, but more in the matter of what we have in the pipeline that we are reviewing through our permitting process and our site development plan process. So addressing them, and these are good projects. These are projects we'd like to see occur in Cape Coral. We decided to look at some options as far as how we can facilitate development without necessarily having this become a predominantly multifamily residential district. And regarding the units I mentioned in the pipeline, so we have 2,500, 2,600 existing units in the Pine Island Road District. We have 1,200 that are in approved projects. So the projects are approved, they're either under construction or they're pulling the permits, they're underway to do that. And then there's another 4,800 in projects that are under review. And these projects under review, in the main, these projects didn't exist 12, 15 months ago. I mean, this has been a rather sudden, at least in a planner's timeline, a rather sudden circumstance where all these units kind of came in at the same time. So if you were to add the existing units, the units in approved projects, the units under review, it gets you to 8,600 units, which is, almost 3,600 above our existing residential cap. So to avoid being in conflict with our comprehensive plan, we're proposing the following, which is to delete the table in its entirety. Under further consideration, we realized that we didn't want to have restrictions on the amount of retail, office, warehousing, light industrial, and hotels. That just, it's 2023, it's not 2002. As I mentioned before, things as far as providing utilities and the widening of Pine Island Road has really kind of removed the constraints as far as capacity is concerned. So we figured, let's not continue to retain these caps, let's just remove them in their entirety. Regarding the residential cap, you'll notice we deleted that too, but we followed up with a sentence under that says that the maximum number of residential dwelling units in the Pine Island Road District is 8,615 units for the entire future land use map classification. That number, you may recall, is the same number that we have of the sum of existing units, units in approved projects, and units in projects under review. So we are facilitating those developments already in the process that we've been reviewing, but we are kind of closing the door, frankly, for future projects beyond that in the Pine Island Road District, in the purple, if you will, in that certain future land use classification. We also added another sentence that references the Live Local Act that was Senate Bill 102 that was passed earlier this year, which basically says that affordable multifamily rental units per Florida Statute 166, as amended, shall not count toward the residential development limitations. So if someone goes through that process, those units frankly don't count against the cap. To conclude, this language is consistent with policy 1.19 of our future land use element, which adopts urban corridor guidelines. We are going to have language, I should say this, for vertically integrated mixed-use buildings in a future conversation. So this is almost like part one of a multi-part process regarding the Pine Island Road District. Frankly, that vertically integrated language was at this stage, was rather confusing, and we wanted to separate that from the immediate point of addressing the cap today. The proposed language is consistent with policy 3.3 of our future land use element, which refers to the city's need to initiate amendments to the comprehensive plan to ensure an adequate supply of non-residential units. This revises and removes restrictions upon our primary east-west commercial corridor to ensure that the corridor's role is not abridged. And staff recommends not approval because, again, this is something that we will be transmitting to the state and regional agencies for review, but we recommend transmittal of the proposed amendments. I thank you for your time. I'll stand by if you have any questions after citizens' input.
Wyatt, thank you. This is a public hearing. If there are any members of the audience that wish to speak, please direct yourself to the podium and state your full name for the record. Seeing none, I'll close citizens' input. I'll turn it over to the commission. Any commissioners' comments? Commissioner Schwartz?
I get concerned about removing restrictions when already driving around the infrastructure seems to be stretched really far. So if we're going to remove restrictions to allow so much more, are we doing something for the infrastructure, for the roading? What are we doing to offset?
Currently, the Florida Department of Transportation is reviewing widening Pine Island Road to 6 lanes for much, if not all, I think certainly much of Pine Island Road east of Chiquita Boulevard. I think they're also looking at the segment west of Chiquita too, but my memory isn't as good as it used to be. So regarding the road infrastructure, and again, Pine Island Road is a state road. It's not under local jurisdiction. We can't personally, make this a capital improvement project. It's a state roadway, but the state's looking into it. So that, and we are confident that, we're a community of 220,000 people. They recognize the road is not quite failing level of service yet, but it's a matter of time before it does. So with those improvements though, we feel that there'll be a sufficient capacity for additional non-residential uses. Furthermore, I mean, this is one of the reasons why this is such a principal commercial corridor for us is that unlike much of Cape Coral, the properties along Pine Island Road are not your platted 10,000 square foot properties. You do have parcels of size. There's a few parcels in excess of 10 acres. There's particularly one 100-acre piece of property on the part of Pine Island Road between Burnt Store and Chiquita. So this is where we get that commercial base. There's few places elsewhere. There are a few other places in Cape Coral where we can accomplish that without really impacting a lot of existing residential uses. So that's another reason why we think removing the development caps for industrial, office, warehousing, retail, in an area that frankly it's in the center of Cape Coral. So it's a good location. We're not pushing this out to the far-flung reaches of Cape Coral. This is something that for a community of our size is fairly centrally located. So for these reasons, we don't have any heartburn about removing those development caps. And regarding the utilities, we have certainly our utility master plans. We have excess capacity, and we'll continue to have excess capacity for potable water and centralized sewer and irrigation. So,
Yeah, because that becomes a concern when you start talking about all these multifamilies that we're talking about. It takes the end result population from 400,000 to now 600,000 or 800,000. And the infrastructure, the roadways, that kind of stuff is terrifying. So I would just like to know that there are plans in place or moving along equally with the development to keep the roadways free.
We are continuing to abide by our responsibilities to ensure that there's going to be adequate transportation and utilities and infrastructure for these projects. I understand we have a growth model update coming up in a couple of months. My understanding is that the ceiling, if you will, of the population isn't going to be much. I don't think it might be around 400,000, but things like 500,000, 750,000, those are numbers we're not going to reach unless we start looking at things like 50 units an acre for the entirety of the city, which isn't going to happen based on our platted lands in nature. So just to put you at ease there, those really large numbers we're not going to see, but you're welcome.
Thank you. Any other comments from the commissioners? Commissioner Severson?
Thank you, Chair. I guess my question is, when this was instituted in 2002, was there a
Could you turn the
timeline?
mic on? The mic, it's right here. It's right on the. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Was there a timeline that was initiated at that time when these policies were put into place that were projecting a growth that would give us a look at 2023 when what we could match, or was it just kind of instituted and then we'll see how it goes?
It was instituted, and oddly enough, back then, the numbers for the planners who were there at that time, and I was one of them, those numbers were viewed as fanciful. Like we never in our wildest dreams did we think we'd ever get 5,000 units in the Pine Island Road District. I mean, this was back at a time when we might have had 2 or 3 multifamily projects that had more than 100 units. I mean, it's astounding the number of projects we've had, and Hurricane Ian has not slowed things down. So basically, whenever we make these changes to the comprehensive plan, you're instituting into a policy, and the policy it's a living document, but those numbers stay there. They don't sunset. There's no immediate reversion clause that says, well, if this doesn't happen by 2015, the policy goes away. So we were not planning back in 2002 to look at this at the year 2023. We do have a requirement through Florida statute, the evaluation and appraisal review process, where we look at our comp plan every 7 years. Even at our last review back in 2021, we didn't have roughly the 15 or 20 multifamily projects that we're looking at now. So even in 2021, we were well below the multifamily residential unit numbers. This is really something that came to become an issue in about the last year to 15 months.
Mr. Chair, one more. And kind of along that line, I just want to make sure I understand this. So the multifamily unit numbers are not included in the cap of 8615.
Yep. That is the cap. That's what we propose to become the new multifamily residential cap.
All right, got it.
So we're changing it from 5,030, just to be clear for everyone, we intend to increase it from 5,030 units to 8,615.
Commissioner Botana?
There's the light, okay. Along the lines of Commissioner Severson's initial question, I guess it occurs to me, why were there caps put in the plan originally? There must have been a reason why somebody felt that all these categories should have been capped.
This
And nobody's paid attention to.
basically, the caps were instituted. They were foisted upon the city, if you will, by the state agencies back in 2002. This was not something we had asked for. And they had done that because back in 2002, we had, as part of our proposal, and again, the state regional agencies review this, we had mentioned the Pine Island Road District was intended to become a mixed-use future land use classification, to which the state then said, okay, what's in the mix? And then they proceed to go, okay, based on what you have here, based on the roadway, based on the 4 lanes for much of Pine Island Road back then, 2 lanes for the part west of Chiquita, we're looking at a 3-to-1 mix of retail versus office, industrial, warehousing, and here's your number for your multifamily residential units. This was not something we had asked for. In fact, speaking as a professional planner, we try to move away from caps as often as we can to avoid instances like these.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments from the commissioners? Severson?
Yes, it was a good follow-up question. The question that I have is, So we're addressing the east-west flow. But we've got north-south flow that's going to be significantly affected by that as well, getting to the South Cape from Pine Island Road District. Is there a commensurate plan with putting in some support corridors, if you will, that will facilitate that growth and try and keep the north-south lanes from turning into a parking lot?
About that, so we have another corridor project that unfortunately has been put on hold by another Senate Bill 250, for the Burnt Store Road. We have a Burnt Store corridor plan. We are currently, basically until I guess it's 2026, kind of in a holding pattern because we cannot move forward with that due to that Senate bill. But what we have done to this point is we've established the rule books, the framework in our comprehensive plan for the Burnt Store Road corridor. We are midway through the process of adopting a future land use map amendment for the Burnt Stores, basically giving it its own color, and then following up with a zoning district regulations and mapping a zoning district. So we are in like step 2 of a 4-step process for Burnt Store. For the same reasons that Pine Island, there are a lot of similarities. For much of the area that we plan to amend on Burnt Store, we don't have platted lots, so we're talking about larger properties. Actually, the city has a fair amount of property on the west side of Burnt Store. We're talking about north of Van Buren, as you go north towards the Charlotte County line. So the idea is we would need, at a minimum, a second commercial corridor, particularly for the Northwest Cape, which lacks those sorts of uses. But will eventually, I mean, probably in short order, require those services as utilities continue to move northward. And that's kind of what we're looking at after North 1 is finished. So, so to your question, yes, we don't wish for Pine Island to be a parking lot. And again, while Pine Island Road is centrally located, and that is very good, particularly for people south of Pine Island Road, we want people and we want our residents, we want our visitors to have multiple areas where they can go for their commerce and industry needs.
Thank you. Any other comments from the commission? I just had a few comments. So is it safe to say that the city of Cape Coral is underserved for commercial office space, warehouse, and light manufacturing, as well as hotels?
Absolutely.
So to do away with those would only make sense, and that's obviously the last bastion of large parcels of land where you can accommodate and facilitate development. That would reach those goals. As far as increasing the residential units, the multifamily residential units in that area, obviously we have that cap of 5,030. That could be troublesome as far as taking away from some of that land. However, I do think that it'll act as a catalyst to bring in some of those developments, some of those larger national businesses and retailers, et cetera, things that we need in the city of Cape. So all in all, I think it'll be beneficial for that, but to retain the cap on multifamily, I would say is probably advisable, and you guys have already done that, obviously. So with those comments made, do we have anything else from the commission? Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion to transmit.
Second.
Motion to transmit to council made by Commissioner Sommers and a second by Commissioner Schwartz.
Yeah.
Madam City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Apking,
Aye.
Botana. Aye. Marker,
Aye.
Severson,
Aye.
Summers,
Aye.
King,
Aye.
Schwartz.
Aye.
All ayes, motion carried.
Thank you. All right, next item on the agenda is item 7, and that is citizens' input. This is a public hearing. If there's any members of the audience that wish to speak, please direct yourself to the podium and state your full name for the record.
Good morning. My name is Eileen Venezia. Over the last several years, and especially after Hurricane Ian, the importance of mangroves and wetlands has been front and center in any type of meeting or discussion regarding development by coastlines. Redfish Point is one such development. The destruction of acres and acres of mangroves and wetlands will have a profound impact on the land, wildlife, and the citizens of Cape Coral who live nearby. On December 5th at 5:30 p.m. at the Cape Coral Library, there will be a public meeting where the importance of mangroves and wetlands will be discussed. I have brought, and you have been given, a handout which lists the details regarding this meeting. Please note that seating is limited, so registration is mandatory for all attendees. I hope to see you there. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Are there any other members of the audience that wish to speak? And please state your full name for the record.
My name is Josh Salazar. I am talking in behalf of my dad, Luis Salazar. So the subject is the request for modification of the land use ordinance, the case FLUM 22-0000030. So, dear commissioners, Luis B. Salazar is a legal representative of LD Investment Enterprise, Inc., and owner of the lot 1001 and Southwest 4th Terrace, Cape Coral, Florida. Within the FLUM 22-00030 case of Ordinance 7913, he is appearing before you to state and request the following statements. Number one, that the ordinance modifying the comprehensive plan of the city of Cape Coral, Florida, changing the future land use map from the Pine Island Road District to single-family residential for properties like lots number 46 and number 47 in block 3623, unit 49 of Cape Coral, located in 1011 Southwest 4th Terrace. Number two, as his land is within the 5 square feet of lots 46 and 47 located at 1011 Southwest 4th Terrace, and being the owner of the lot 1001 Southwest 4th Terrace, I hereby express my support for the ordinance that changes the land use for commercial to residential. He kindly requests the approval of the mentioned land use modification ordinance. He wants to convey the City of Council directors of Cape Coral or commissioners that he's willing to undertake any necessary actions to include his lot in the aforementioned ordinance. He's also prepared to cover any associated costs and municipal fees. He also wants to point out that he emailed the city talking about this request, and he never got back. And also, we talked with Wyatt Daltrey, and he pointed out that this was a residential zone during the years of 2002 until 2004 that it became a commercial property. So.
Thank you, Josh. I'd like to recognize Councilmember Welsh.
Yeah, just for your guys' reference, the property that he's talking about is 2 lots to the right of the one that you guys recommended denial from Pine Island Road District to residential, even though planning staff had noted that that was probably the correct usage. As you do know or might not know, that came before council and we approved the lots 2 to the left of this one to switch from Pine Island Road District to residential, so this is probably stemming from that. So I'm going to direct staff to speak with him about the proper channels on what he needs to do for this. And more than likely, you'll probably see this lot and potentially the other 2 lots adjacent to it to follow that same zoning change that we made on council, I believe it was 2 weeks ago at the last meeting. So that's where this came from, and just to clear up any confusion or thoughts you might have on that. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you, Councilman. Thank you,
Thank
Josh.
you.
Are there any other citizens that would wish to speak? Seeing none, we'll close citizens' input. Move on to item 8, other business. Is there any other business? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 9, and that's the time and date of the next meeting. The next regular meeting for the Planning and Zoning Commission is scheduled for Wednesday, January 10th, 2024 at 9 a.m. in council chambers. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion, so moved. Second.
Motion by Commissioner Botana. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? This meeting's adjourned.